Wednesday, August. It's already August.
We're August 19th. August 19th. I know that because I just had to fill out all my travel applications. I just came back from visiting my wife's family in Italy. They're on the green list from Ireland. And everywhere you go, you have to put all your certificates. And so I've had to report that it's August 19th about 3 times just to get through the whole ceremony of the flight. So today's August 19th.
Fantastic. So how was it, by the way, the travel, and did you guys fly there or?
Yeah, we flew. I mean, I'm supposed to keep it low key, which I suppose this is the opposite of doing that on a podcast. But you know, she's obviously if Italy was going to be on the green list, we were going to go visit her family. So that's kind of our and catch some sun on the way. But yeah, it was like. I think fascinating. I mean, the idea of social distancing for Italians is a whole phenomena. You know, like I'm not sure they get it completely. You know, but they went through so much trauma. You know, we met with a lot of people. It was just they'd gone through so much trauma beforehand that they were quite sensitive to it. And the policies seemed to be changing while we were there. About what you could do. Everyone was wearing masks. Very stylish masks, as you would expect from Italians.
Of course, designer masks, I'm sure. Which I should ask my girls kind of what their preference is these days.
Right, because one of your girls is going to be in Italy, doing design.
That's the hypothesis as of now. So we're
right.
We're shooting for her to be in Florence in September. So let's see. But
flight was half empty. We were masked.
You're an optimist, Jim. It's half full.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's half full. It's half full. Right.
I was actually just earlier with somebody on Teams video, and they were entering, a bus, right? And everybody's wearing masks. And the ironic part is, at the airports, it's like you cannot sit next to each other in the seats in the airports because they block it off. But then in the plane, as long as the seat is sold, they pack people in. So go figure. But supposedly,
I think the planes were half empty, but we'll see. And it's good to see things.
Half full, man. Half full. Yeah. I'm gonna keep reminding you, you're an optimist. on that optimistic note,
great.
I'm gonna very quickly introduce him as always.
Sure.
And as always, we're gonna make that person say their last name because I'm sure I'm gonna butcher it. He's certainly a good friend of mine. I do believe you know him as well. You've come across him in the path. So
definitely come across him, but this will be one of the closest meetings.
Virtually. So
right.
So, and actually a shout out to just DaMassa, who introduced me and said, you guys are going to be like, brothers from another mothers, right?
Right.
So I'm going to enter and admit Milind Kamkolkar, and he will pronounce it correctly, I'm sure.
Great. Milind.
There's his.
Great. Hold on. Here we go. What's up, guys? How are you?
That's a good way to do green screening.
Looking good.
I've got to say, I'm super excited because today's you guys are the first external folks I'm getting to speak to in my newly painted study. So I'm very thrilled.
Wow, we're honored as well.
This is a new study. It's a new green background for podcasting, or?
I don't know for podcasting per se. I wanted a popping out color just to keep me awake during the day.
Right. I thought you were doing it because you're going to be talking to someone based in Ireland, so there's a bit of green going on. Or
of course, actually, usually slick a message, and I said, "All right, I'm down. Let's go."
Down, jump right in. I love it. But for our listeners / viewers, because I always butcher the last name. So first of all, if you can actually say your name and give a little more background, because where the hell is your accent from for our viewers? I mean, I know it, but.
Yeah, righto. So, so Milind Kamkolkar.
That was close.
So yeah, according to my parents, conceived in Trinidad, but born and raised in Sydney, Australia.
Wow.
Aussie, left Sydney right after undergrad. you know, it was just an excuse to really just get out of town and see the rest of the world, as most Aussies typically do. I think you generally tend to see a lot of Aussie travelers everywhere. And it was also a bit of motivation. You know, I got to say, I had a lab manager in biochem who actually instigated me. I would say she's the catalyst, and I've kept in contact with her over the years. A woman by the name of Jill Johnson, where she said, look, I asked her for a work reference, and she basically said, yeah, I'll give you a reference, but I think the most you're going to do, given your grades, is work in a department store. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So I said, no, that can't be it. So that's what sort of prompted me to leave Oz. But look, yeah, I came to America, studied genetics over at Thomas Jefferson University. You know, met the missus. We moved to California. Worked in, I think probably was one of my most favorite jobs ever, even though it was such a baby in that. But working for John Couch and the Double Twist team. And for your listeners, John Couch was the person who led Lisa, which became Mac OS. He was a very early employee. I think if you read all the Apple history books, you can certainly see John's name there. But you could effectively say, you know, Apple was basically trying to do to the Human Genome Project what in many ways 23andMe has evolved to today. But this was very early days, 1999, 2000 timeframe. Through that,
we're getting old. We're getting old.
Oh, look, I call it aging with grace.
And I'm going to give my age away. We were driving, sorry to interrupt we were driving the other day, Marina and I kind of said, like, in 16 years, I'll be 60.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, some of you guys are closer to it already, but
it's all good. It's all good.
Old lives matter. Old lives matter.
Yeah, no, look, I'll just close it up by saying, look, you know, I've had a very serendipitous career. I mean, each one of those was simply really reasons to just try and feed my kids as we were having them as we go along, right? So, but always loved the life sciences, always loved the intersection of technology, what it could do there. I mean, even as a geneticist, it was cool going from sort of that scientific consulting to technology, you know, adoption and embedding. Worked in some fabulous companies. I mean, I think we were part of the original, I would say the OG crew who first did AI for drug discovery back in the day and made crazy commitments of finding X number of targets. In fact, Eugene, I should say, you know, for your previous company for Bayer, we had a big deal to find 500 novel drug targets over 5 years using the Genome Project. We managed to crush that in year one. It's impressive.
Where was this? This was way before. Yeah.
2001. Science was the company based out of Heidelberg at the EMBL. There's a lot of alumni from there spread out in different companies today doing amazing work. But it was the early days of bioinformatics, man. I mean, we invented that shit, you know? It was coming around, how does this stuff apply? I'm not saying we only, but that was sort of
the OG. So who else is in that OG crew?
Man, there's a bunch of really cool people. I think Chris Bouton, I think Andreas Matern. There's a bunch of guys from Doltus, you know, Eric Schatt, you know, amazing chap from the Rosetta crew. There are a lot of Insight and Cellarity folks that are floating around as well. I mean, that was the first genome sequencing analysis conference. You know, I'll never forget that. That was when there was a lot of money. VC was floating around like bonkers, and it's kind of weird, right? When you think about history repeat itself, I mean, boy, is it repeating itself now, you know?
Yeah. And what's your take with everything going on right now with these? I think it's fascinating. I was looking at your background, and so as a chief digital officer, right? Like, so you've done that role now 3 or 4 times, or some version of that.
Actually, so I was part of the original digital medicine team at Novartis. And, you know, after the consultants gave their blue slides, you know, we said, okay, this makes sense. And, you know, but I ran the AI and data science group, digital medicines at that time. And then Sanofi was the first chief data officer in the life sciences industry at an enterprise level. That was an experience, but you know, but it led me to here. You know, I went back to my roots of genomics and startup again, which I could not be more pleased with. That's
yeah.
You've been wearing a T-shirt. I mean,
you know, I've got to be on point, man. I've got to be on brand, you know.
So tell us, tell us a little bit about Cellarity to give us the kind of the.
Yeah, sure, man. Look, Cellarity was an idea from 2 co-founders at of the company. Avak Kavasian, who's a origin partner at Flagship Pioneering, who's responsible for numerous great companies out there, you know, had a role in the early days of Moderna and all these sorts of companies. But, you know, if you've read anything about Flagship, you know that they pride themselves on internal invention and then funding scientific discoveries that are the first of its kind. And Cellarity is one of those models. We had this convergence, if you will, of single cell data, which is at least year to date the highest resolution of life, i.e. the single cell. And we've had amazing advancements in machine learning and technology that's coming through now. And last but not least, what was missing was truly a thesis to break the boundaries of how we look at biology. And it's quite incredible, right, when you think about it, because biology is such a humbling field. I mean, it makes you realize just how little you know. And when we thought we could try and figure out a bit more about biology by taking the complete antithesis road of how drug development and drug discovery is done today, which is a reductionist path. You know, you reduce things to the smallest anatomical unit, you study it, then try and put it back together. The opposite of that in complex theory is emergence. And we took an emergent path to do that. But net, Cellarity is a company where our why is, as I explained to my daughter, I said, look, you know, when you have kids, or perhaps, you know, when our youngest son goes to school and he starts studying biology, there'll be a chapter in Stryer or other genomics books called Cell Behaviors. And you should know that your dad and his teammates had a little hand in doing that with sponsorship. And I think, you know, the vehicle of creating this new biological hypothesis is developing medicines. That's sort of the venture vehicle that creates the value. But I think ultimately when people join Cellarity, they join it because no one's done cell behavior before. And we think it makes perfect sense in biology today to do so.
And how are you finding the marketplace right now, just with all the, you know, like we've had on the podcast, like, you know, with all the excitement around, you know, the innovation for digital health, and our time is finally here, and, you know, we're like the dog who caught the car and we don't know what to do. And then, but you're in a, like, how are you finding, like, you're in such a deep science space of digital health, and a lot of these valuations are happening, and system improvements and care improvements. Is it a confusing time? Is it clear? Is it as exciting?
I think it's crystal clear to us. I would say it's crystal clear what we want to do. Look, I got to say, man, you know, I didn't really know Flagship before I joined the teams here. I knew that David Epstein, who was a former CEO of Novartis, who was someone who I did a lot of the digital work with back when I was at Novartis. I knew he was here as a general partner. I knew one of my former buddies, or he's still a buddy, not former, but when I was at former colleagues, Remy Evard, who was a CIO for NIBR in the past, he had just joined. And I knew Grace Niwa, who was the executive recruiter at Biogen, and I knew she was there. And I figured, man, you don't attract this kind of amazing talent if you were a nonsense venture creation.
Sure.
And so I say that because having Nubar as your chairman and having Avak as one of the partners helping you, and then the extended Flagship ecosystem back you up, they understand that invention, not innovation, invention needs time to be adopted and to be created in the market.
Right.
And needs actually the right funding pool to go there. So when you hear Nubar speak, it's like Yoda, man. I mean, the guy's amazing. He truly is, just asks you these very insightful questions that you didn't think about before. And that's what helps ground us, but it also keeps us in line with the ambition of the company. So I don't see it confusing at all. I think there's a lot of great companies out there. I look at the AI for drug discovery companies, which is often, you know, a very common comparator, if you will. You know, I'm thrilled that they're doing work, but to me, I look at that work as necessary vehicles that are going to get normalized anyway in big company. It's they're companies that are going to get both accepted and adopted, you know, which is a good thing.
And you see that being internalized. I mean, you know, some of the folks that we all know, right? Atomwise, you know, Insilico, you know, so many. Funding galore, right? And but also at the same time, when you talk to a lot of the scientists, and by the way, you know, this is like a shameless plug for my book of Hard Pill to Swallow. One of the chapters is e-room law, right?
Gulp, gulp.
Yeah. And I think part of this, I mean, to your point, there's like a number of theses. So some companies are, you know, if you break down the drug discovery process even further, because I think everybody talks about the magic AI in drug discovery, but it's, you know, that process itself just has so many different things, and so many of these companies fit in.
Honestly, AI is just curve fitting. That's all it is. You get data, you fit curves. That's, you know. But look, I'll tell you, look at what I see in the AI space. Because I find I'm very excited about it. My whole career has been spent in data mining, not only for this industry. I spent time also outside of the industry doing work.
Right.
You know, when I had my own startup company with a guy from Imperial College, or partnering with them, right? But so the point is, I think there's a couple of companies that are out there today that are definitely buzzworthy and definitely are contributing to the overall good of adoption and acceptance of these technologies.
Right.
You're right. They are innovations, right? New methods being applied to old problems.
Right.
And as a result of that, we will definitely see efficiency and effectiveness. There's no question in my mind that we will not see that. We will. And it's good because these techniques, I mean, if you look at cell painting and computer vision coming together and being able to use computer vision to understand phenotypic landscapes, you know, changes in cell landscapes or changes in anatomy or cell biology. These are brilliant things, right? Recursion, in vitro are doing this wonderfully well. You know, in many ways, you can almost say, like, in vitro is like the next version of recursion in terms of their data models. Daphne Cull is an amazing person, no question in any of our minds. And you think of the team that she's building out there, great company. But, you know, it's again, you know, to this notion of gene target, gene pathway protein, which is the old school way of understanding disease biology.
Right.
And it's great because we will need that improvement. We need their innovations and we need their approach to doing this work. But I think if you're really going to break through and create a new kind of biotech, not just a tech bio, which tends to be that audience, new kind of biotech, you have to radically change and deliberately change what needs to be changed. And in this case, you have to define a whole new target class. Genes and pathways may be useful, but only for some diseases. We call cell behaviors as actually the new target class. The cell, in fact, is the new target. And when you see the AI companies out there, they're either doing very good target identification, they're either doing very good chemical optimization, small molecule screening, you know, Atomwise, etc. Again, all necessary things that we need to adopt. You get some hybrids like the Insilico that are publishing good work in those spaces. But I'll tell you, man, having done that back in 2000 when we crushed those numbers at Lion, you know how many drugs came out of that? And how many years? 12 years, right?
Yeah.
So you have to wonder, you know.
So tell us why. Tell us why. Like,
look,
to your point, you said some before, 500 targets, right, for just Bayer alone at the time, and, you know, one or twosies.
Yeah.
And this 2-3 billion that it takes in 12 years, and, you know,
Look, well, I think there are some obvious reasons that we've all experienced. You know, those of us have been in sort of big pharma in that scale, and you don't even have to be in research to know this. Silos, number one. Lack of sharing data, lack of incremental evidence that's being generated, incredible amounts of silos, frankly, are not integrated, let alone thinking about how we think about disease. Chronic disease is not a disease of respiratory, cardio, or metabolic. It's all of those, and perhaps more. But we never study them that way, and our business franchises are never set up with incentives to think that way. So there are, you know, so we're either working on great technologies, like I see the amazing work coming out of Jay Bradner's team at NIBR, you know, even Mathai's team at J&J, really, really compelling work that's coming through. But, you know, it's the operational innovation that's being implemented there.
Yeah.
We're really not changing process, really. We're adding data lakes instead of databases. We're adding machine learning instead of statistical programming, you know,
Right.
but nothing's actually changed. In fact, I would argue in some places it's gotten more bloated.
So
Right.
I'm gonna bring you back to, I probably would have been rich by now if every time I literally got, I don't know, maybe not a penny, but a buck. All right. You woke me up to this, and it just so resonated. I know I'm building this up, but I think you kind of said, look, I think actually it was on Facebook you posted something, and I saw it. Do you want to do you like doing things better or do better things, right? And man, I used that. Like, I think it helped me through my whole bear 3.5 years, because and what you just described actually is exactly that, right? Like, you will do things better. You will actually improve the efficiencies, operational processes, but are you doing better things?
That's correct. Right. Look, and I,
so thank you, by the way. That was like,
thank you, man. I mean,
mind blown.
It's
but I have to follow you though, because I have this argument all the time in my own head. I just couldn't crystallize it as clearly as you did, Milind. Is this invention versus innovation, right? Like this kind of area. And I think that like by nature, I'm not a scientist by background, but I'm kind of an inventor. And it just takes a long time. And then people that work on the innovation side of the piece, they kind of work in these cycles that are just much, much smaller, right? And pharma, like these large organizations, I'm not like hanging pharma out to dry. These large organizations, the average tenure, and we've talked about this on the podcast, in a role is 2 or 3 years. So, so it's like NFL football players, you're only getting so much time out of these athletes, inside of space. And so how can you do invention if something's going to take 12 years or life's work, right?
No, you're right. And I know Eugene and I certainly have had several drinks over this topic, in the past, right? But it was just that notion of, you need avatars, right? You need avatars of people coming through in the same role to make that incremental progression in these large companies. And honestly, it's not their fault. I think at some point you just become too big to move fast, right? And which is okay, because then you partner them with people who can move fast, right? And I think the first set of avatars, people like Eugene, myself, we've got other boys and girls in the circle who do this kind of stuff, right? You have change catalysts and people that leave dead bodies along the road, man. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I definitely left dead bodies along the road, no question in my mind. There are probably people that hate my guts, and there are people that probably love it. There you go. Look at this guy.
You said avatar, and I was here.
That's it. No, but this is what it is, right? Like, there you go.
Mine's not working.
I knew you were trying to do the same, Jim Joyce, but it didn't work for you.
No, man, but it's just so funny, because you see, you have to have people that deliberately piss off the organization, so that the next person who comes in doesn't have to do that again, but can actually leverage the value of really breaking those ceilings of middle management, right? And just saying, look, let us get some work done so we can actually do some stuff. And
the play layer.
Yeah, it's like permafrost. All it just needs to be done is thawed.
So what happens now, though? If we think about, so we're in this kind of we're talking about this a lot. We're in this kind of enlightened time now of digital healthcare innovations, targeting science, targeting better patient care, efficiency. And so we're in this space now. So I always thought the kind of innovations or inventions or wherever that I come up with when I go talk to pharmaceutical companies that we work a lot with, I always found that there was people that came from hardcore science, right? And then embraced digital from a hardcore science. And then people came maybe from more of the commercial or business side of it and embraced it very differently. And there was yet they're kind of put in the same room, they're kind of painted with the same cloth, but they're really, and the scientists might just get bored with the idea of a Livongo, right? That's kind of, very different. But what happens now to us? How do these organizations change?
I'm not sure I think it's the mindset you go into. If, we don't need pharma to be disrupted. Honestly, that's such a nonsensical idea. You want them to be around. If you think about disrupting pharma, why the hell are you partnering with someone you want to disrupt? I mean, it's so stupid, right, when you think about it, because it's a cash cow you can get partnership funds from. Actually, I think, with the innovation pieces where people partner, the ones that are successful are the ones that are able to implement it into an existing workflow where it can be adopted, right? Your first goal is to get accepted. Like, is this an approach that's feasible? Number two, can this be adopted in a time frame that is reasonable enough at a cost and resource allocation that's meaningful? If you're then able to produce the evidence, that's when you get scaling up of acceptance. But the initial, you want to try, I've mentored a bunch of different startup companies, and
that's the 12 years you just described.
Sorry?
That's the 12 years you just described.
In some cases, yeah. I mean, look, commercial obviously operates in a very different time scale compared to medical, or any time you're being a patient, obviously you have to be, respectful, right, of that. But
I mean, look, at the end of the day, and I still remember this, we are talking about our human bodies, right? And and we need to be cautious of that. And so again, I think we chatted with someone on I think Nicole last time that
Nicole
with
Baker.
Nicole Baker around the government expediting the process now, right? I mean, we'll see what that ends up as, right, in the next year or two. But
no, I think it's fascinating, man. You could not be in a better time to be in this space. I think the technology is right. I don't think it really is no longer a technology issue in terms of getting work done. I think the jury's still out on blockchain. I don't know about that. Let's see. That may take
that's still around.
Yeah, it feels.
I'm kidding.
It feels so 2019. Or
the US, I think I was reading an article yesterday. The U.S. Post Office put something around there to do secure mail-in ballots and stuff like that. There's a patent that they did. It was very interesting. But anyway, that's different. Let's say technology is not an issue, right? People are still an issue, or skill sets are still an issue. So do you have the right folks to be able to execute this in a time frame that's appropriate? And then I think it's how you value that, right? And to really reach value, you have to show evidence. And I think what we're going to see in the next couple of years is a massive bloodletting, frankly, of, again, just akin this back to .com ages. I mean, there's literally stupidity for everything nowadays. And I'm not convinced that they are either being adopted, that there's a business plan around them, there's an operating model of what you want to get done. And ultimately, when you think about working with pharma, 9 times out of 10, they end up being massive consulting projects, not technology plays. And it's a huge margin issue when you consider that as your business model. You go into consulting, low number margins. Product, high margins. And most of these, really great ideas end up being bastardized through massive consulting projects and endless pilots that never end.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's nothing, you can put a good sort of prototype together. You may expect a Frankenstein at the end, right? Like it's just.
No, you're right. And I'm again, I remain really optimistic about this space because I do believe the time is right now to really start thinking and getting people who can cross these chasms, these polyglots who can speak multiple languages.
But do you think like right now, like take like you have like Eugene's company, that in him,
let's see if you can do a 30-second pitch on my behalf.
I love your coach. I can really do it. I mean, I think this concept of identifying the clear gap and demand, in the marketplace is kind of this massive gap. It's like, people talk about general practitioners, there not being enough of them. So this whole idea that through all these digital health tools, Eugene, we've created this demand for health coaches that no one ever saw before. And you're trying to create a marketplace to meet the demand. Did I get it?
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
I love Eugene's company too, I'm down with
it. No, I was pitching Eugene's company. But it is like now, like I don't see a stage where early stage companies, people without something substantial don't really get funded, don't get across the line. I don't even think they can date companies right now. Isn't that the difference between, you know, the .com and what's happening in digital health right now? Is that this whole kind of filtering process is pretty severe at the beginning. That's how it feels to me anyway. Meaning unless like you're an established entrepreneur with the background, with the track record, yeah, you can get some new stuff across the line. But, you know, kind of a kid with an idea and a server.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that, to be honest with you. I think there's more than enough angel investors out there that if you want money, you can get money. Right?
You think so?
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, I mean, you know, I was speaking to my buddy. I don't know if you guys know B Capital, right? They were one of the companies that funded Evidation and Atomwise. So my childhood friend there, Raj Ganguly, is one of the co-founders of B Capital with Eduardo Saverin, right? And we were chatting 2 weekends ago on his birthday, and it was just cool, just chatting. You know, first we were just catching up, you know, but then, you know, just hearing his perspective on how they're growing B Capital and what his thoughts are on the space. He was asking my thoughts on the digital health space. What else should they be thinking about? And, you know, in his own words, he said, you know, Mills, it's not an issue of capital right now. There is a stupid amount of money floating around just from successful IPOs, exits, etc. I think we got to look for things that are now in a position to start thinking about creating legacy, that are on the road to creating a legacy transformation. And that's really sort of the zone which you're at now, which is, for an entrepreneur, is incredibly difficult, because on one hand, you've got an option, you know, you should always have in your back of your head, you know, how should I exit? Should I exit? When should I exit? Right? Because there will be an exit at some point. And you don't want that to come at the risk of, you know, if you're a young chap, fair enough, right? But or young woman, fair enough. But you don't want it to come at the risk of not leaving a legacy, you know? When I think about a double twist, you know, I mean, the only thing I can still remember, and you can find it on eBay, the little double twist scientific dolls that we made back in the day. There was some
legacy.
Like they're around, you know. I see some folks at Pfizer and J&J still have them on their desk, and it cracks me up, right? Because I'm like, that was brilliant. But
it's interesting, and kind of just a little bit of the echo, and I appreciate, Jim, your 30-second pitch, but like when Marina, right, started your coach, it was really all around legacy, right? It's coming through a challenge that she had, right? And turning that into an energy, right, to actually create a whole thing, right? A whole company around it. And the discussions are not around, you know, valuations or, yeah, I mean, ultimately we'll have those discussions, but that's not the reason for it. And that was like the best thing for me to join her on the journey on it, right? Because it's got something here.
This sense of purpose, right? Like they in companies, you know, kind of fight for that, right? Like it's a real,
which to me actually is a very unique thing in the health and care space, right? You know, it's not a widget thing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not, you know, there's always some reasoning for it and finding a market fit and all of that.
Sure.
But I think the entrepreneurs in the health and care space, I'm sure there's great ones that look at a market gap, and we're going to create a business around it and sell it, and it happens and it does fine, right? But I guess one other thing, I actually personally see that I agree with you, Milind, that there is money around, that there's absolutely money, but I do think that, you know, at least sort of putting my old hat on, you know, the requirement was no longer you have an idea, right? You're a young entrepreneur. You needed a team of co-founders with different expertise. That was the requirement. You know, so I do think that funnel of actually creating good companies, because of the maturity of the digital health space, has evolved over the last, let's call it 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Eugene and James, right? I mean, for sure, right? You know, I think when this whole digital health stuff really started taking off, at that time they were ideas, right? They were reasonable, and so we saw a lot of folks come through. Some made it, some didn't. Nowadays, I agree, you know, the ownership of someone who did ad placements for many years, all of a sudden coming in and thinking they can solve Medicare Part D, I'm not sure is a one-to-one translation, right?
Hope they do.
And if you think about it, most of the digital leads that tend to have either come in pharma, et cetera, have come from that multi-channel engagement background, which is only one part of the business model. Really is.
But I was thinking about this. Eugene, today coming in. Like, if we just had to riff and talk on a subject, I thought it was really interesting. Like we say with my company's technology, with Health Beacon's technology, we're getting to a scale that we're starting to get lots of patient stories fed back to us, and then we have people in the digital health ecosystem that actually have our tool,
right?
Not by design, not by just because they're on a chronic injectable medication.
We're all human beings, and we are all patients at some point in our life.
And I think that's one of the most interesting things about, whereas the chances, if you think about like great scientific discoveries that you hear about, like the ones that get made, into movies, it's about, some father, pursuing a treatment for their child and learning the science, and, or, a mother not accepting a certain answer, or someone trying to, like how that influenced scientific discovery. But digital health is even so much, because you don't have to become a scientist, right? Like you were saying, hey, I don't like how I'm being treated. I don't like how Medicare, Part D works, and they can try to go solve that. So this whole idea that the patient is just driving the transformation, or look at, like, we do a lot, obviously we talk a lot about Livongo, Glenn Tullman's experience with his son, and talking about that quite openly, and saying, hey, I'm going to solve this. And he had the wherewithal to actually try to solve it,
No, look, you're right. I mean, I'll tell you, on a personal front, Eugene knows this. Last year I had open heart surgery in May 10th, to be specific. Completely asymptomatic leading up to it. It was a congenital issue. Nowadays, it's an oil and filter change. I mean, the cardiovascular surgeons are brilliant nowadays. It's just,
wow.
If they hit rate, how many of these surgeries do they do per day? Do people live? Yes. Okay, good. You're my doc, kind of thing, right? Which is fine. But the reality is, coming after that, I was getting wonderful post-operative care, but there were so many nuances in that post-operative piece that I thought, oh my God, I can't believe this is what you have to go through. Getting access to my own data. I wanted to sequence my own tissue. I'm like, why can't I have my own damn old valve to see whether there's some genetic dispositions that I could better understand? Of course, no, there was rigmarole there. The Apple Watch study. I'm on the Apple Watch study with MGH on cardiac care. Wonderful company, but again, just looking at it from the patient experience, I take my watch off when I come home in the evening. I don't wear it. I don't wear it going to bed. I don't wear it waking up. I have a cup of coffee, watch the telly for a bit, then I put it on. And you think those clinical endpoints for a cardiologist to be able to understand, okay, here are some resting, resting heartbeat baselines. Here's what REM is like throughout those things, are such crucial pieces of information that as a data person back in the day, I would say, what is wrong with these people? Why can't they just wear their damn watch? They don't want it.
Right, because they took a shower. They took a shower or something.
You learn these things. You see these things. That's it.
So I purposely, this is what I love about the icon, because I just looked at the time. We're like 40 something minutes into it, and we try to keep it. So I figured I'd get you guys' attention because I'm enjoying the shit out of this. But this is probably better. So we all of the digital health pirates, I guess, pioneers. So on that note, any I don't know. I actually, there's so many good nuggets. I think you guys have, this episode specifically, just finished writing my chapter on e-room law. So
you're obliged, man.
So this will get transcribed with all the full credits and all of that. But
of course.
Anyway, so on that note, I think this was awesome. Just had a lot of fun. I'm surprised you didn't play with your little backgrounds, given the fact that you have green screen.
Look,
but
don't worry. Don't.
No. So August 19th, we're over and out. Milind, thanks for hopping in. There you go. Cellarity everywhere. Love it. Love it.
Awesome.
And then for the viewers and listeners, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow in Spotify or whatever other partnerships. I think Amazon partnership is coming soon.
Amazon.
Yeah. We're
Spotify,
good.
Apple.
Yeah,
Google,
and with this, I mean, all the names that Milind just like I couldn't even keep up. So I'll follow up with you because I want to make sure everybody, those people, see this episode.
Yeah.
That you gave him credit.
Over and out. We're over the hump day. Thank you
All right.
both. Cheers.
Thank you. See you, kids.